Greetings, one and all. We're going to be doing a little bit of artwork before the Dadman stream. Now, he's going to be doing stuff, and I'm going to be trying to make sure to show him support for his stream, and so thus I'm not going to be probably going on for too terribly long this evening. But anyway, we'll try and get along as far as we can. I'm going to do a little bit of experimenting, and so no idea how successful tonight will be. Just going to dabble and see what happens. Anyway, if you find something of interest, something you think was worthwhile to come by and learn from or get ideas from, be sure to leave a like, and if you don't, feel free to do dislike. I will accept both. Right now, we are streaming to the wrong location. Great. Well, that's perfectly fine. It was meant to be. We will leave it as is, but I am going to change the titles. I'm not going to be chatting too terribly much. I ramble enough for you guys. And so, I may have something to say later on, but I'm just going to try and focus on doing the artwork. So, holler if you want to hear me say something. Otherwise, I'll just try and stay focused. And lastly, you got to put this out there. Not like I'm going to be promoting this stuff too much. I still post it all the same. I only have like 2 places I ever post this stuff, and I think that's fine. Some people will post things all over the place. I don't think it's necessarily beneficial, and I think it can lead to some delusions. So anyway, hopefully people still appreciate this, these sort of streams, but I don't try and fight to try and grow the channel. Maybe that's my fault. Maybe I should do more fighting, but yeah, I can't pull myself to do that. All right, let me do one last thing, the audio test. And let's do Red Dead also for tonight. Start off with this, though, for the audio test. It's not working. That's a first. Well, okay. This is indeed a first. I gotta make a note of this one. Wow. First time stream radio, like, actively broke? Like, substantially. Huh. Well, that is perplexing. All right, let me get the UI pulled up here. And that means I'm going to have to refresh this. All right, it's working again. Very peculiar. But everything seems to be operational now. Okay. Now we're underway. You know, it was mentioned to me earlier today that there is an art competition up here in Alaska. Well, not a competition, it's more like a gallery where artists have the ability to submit things and then you can have them showcased at a very commonly visited location. And then there's the chance that it can get sold there. And they say, hey, you know, hopefully you get a chance to put in a submission. They don't know my art skills. And, you know, the more I think about it, the more I realize I really don't have very good art skills. Now, some people would look at my artwork and say, what are you talking about? Of course you have art skills. Not enough to really compete in anything. I've been observing people that do those sorts of things. They have a very common sort of style. They have a very common audience. I don't fit into that. In fact, the more I think about it, the more I realize I really don't have artistic skills. I'm a dabbler. My artistic skills, if I had true art skills, I'd be able to make an actual living doing it. Instead, my art skills fell apart in many ways, and I have not been able to successfully submit things, and so thus I'm a hobbyist. That's not a bad thing. Most people in this world will be hobbyists. But it is something where if you go out and submit stuff for competitions and assume you're just naturally going to win, well, it reminds me of when I actually did submit for an artistic competition. And I got an honorable mention. We didn't place. In fact, we had... I was not the originator of the concept. I was artistic motion graphics guy that the guy that had planned it reached out to and said, hey, I want to try and pull this off. And I said, hey, I wasn't a super big fan of the concept, but, it was clever enough. It was wholesome, and it wasn't anything I'd feel ashamed doing. And so I did it. And we got an honorable mention. And, but we didn't place. In fact, when we had the opportunity to stand up to applause of that, they cut it short. We were the only group that they cut short. And we just kind of stood there awkwardly while they were already moving on to other things. And so it looked like we were like trying to get more attention or something like that. And so we looked at each other like, well, okay, I guess they moved on already. And so we sat down. I still don't know if it was a mistake, if they actually didn't even mean to mention it. Like, they mentioned like, please stand. But then they quickly went on to reading on to the next thing. So we just looked selfish. And, but anyway, we got an honorable mention, but we didn't place in any of the categories. And there wasn't a lot of competition. And we lost to somebody who put effort into their project, but it wasn't nearly as refined. And so, thus we kind of thought, well, what happened? Well, I realized by the end of it that we were competing with the wrong people. We were competing in a world of Hollywood. And as such, people wanted Hollywood stories. People wanted the glamorous sort of stuff. They wanted dark. They wanted gritty. And here we just had wholesome and fun-loving. Afterwards, we were alone. We went out of the event, and the guy that I had done this with, he was very upset because he had put a lot of time and effort into it. We all had. Both of us had. But it hit him hardest because he thought, how could his idea be so blown off? And I can understand. He was the one who had the idea. It fell upon him first and foremost. And so obviously he was going to have that hard-hitting feeling. And it hit me hard, but I was just the brute force to make it happen. I wasn't the person who had the reputation on the line, so to speak. He kind of did. And we came away from it, and we're about ready to walk off, and up comes a family. There was not many families at the competition, and they came up and said, hey, you know what? Yours is actually the only show that our family liked. Well, obviously, because they had kids. And it was targeted to people with kids. And that's when I kind of realized your idea isn't necessarily bad if it's wholesome and it doesn't do well. You're just pandering to the wrong audience. And that's a tough one. How do you find the right audience? If in this culture especially, how do you find it when well, anyway, they came up to us and said, you know, we actually wish that yours had won. They went out of their way to reach out to us. They went out of their way to grab us before we left, and they actually offered to take the guy out to dinner to show their appreciation for actually doing something wholesome. That made him a lot more... well, that improved his mood a little bit. But it was still like the realization of that people could like it so much that they would want to do that. But the rest of the audience couldn't care less. So thus raises the question, is it worth fighting for if it's a rigged match? I've been wondering this a lot over the last couple of years, in part because I've done some studying into the world of cheating in games and also cheating in the economy or whatnot, and I noticed a trend. People that don't have a problem with cheating will kind of write it off and say, oh, well, it's just, you just gotta kind of ignore that stuff and just press on. And those that are offended by cheating get furious about it. They don't like a rigged fight. They want it to be fair and square. Who can blame them? So when you're going up in a category that kind of gets nixed and the wholesome category disappears, well, it was I don't remember the actual rules, but I remember that we were trying to gun for a certain category, but we lost to somebody who did an artistic nonsense thing, and they didn't even put story into it. It was more like it was a fame thing. This person was well known, and so everyone voted for that. It was rigged in that sense. The tough part of the lesson, though, is that the world is rigged. It's either going to be the powerful, it's going to be the famous, or it's going to be those that are willing to bend the rules. Those people will thrive. Those people will succeed. But that's not how it's supposed to be. We live in a broken world. We live in a sinful world. I do not buy the fact that people will claim that, oh, well, that's just how the world works. Learn to live with it. No, I can't do it. Because I'm trying to live according to how God would have us live. But here's the thing. The world doesn't want to live as God wants us to live. He doesn't want us to be robbing people. He doesn't want us to be cheating people. He doesn't want us to be taking advantage of others. But yet those are the people who come out on top. Does he not care? From what I have observed, he allows the world to behave as it wants. He's trying to save it. And a lot of people don't get the punishment that they kind of deserve. No, I'm not saying that people that join competitions and are victorious somehow need punished. No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that this is based upon a concept. What is right and what is wrong? How do you play in a world that is naturally unfair if you're somebody who believes that it should be fair? How do you go about it? Something to remember is that there are people that are going to feel like they rule the world, and then in a moment it will disappear. Those people are going to have no idea as to why that happened. They're going to chalk it up to luck. They're going to chop it up to let me pause on that. Let me pause on that, go back and reapproach this, because that's going to go into some tougher territory to try and explain. Let's go back and let's say instead, you see somebody who is who robs a store, which, by the way, I've been seeing more and more often. Almost every single time I go down to my local store, I'm seeing somebody rob that place. Almost every single time. I'm kind of waiting for when the bars go on all the shelves. It's probably not long until that happens. Although they can solve the problem just by having people that will stop these folks when the alarm goes off. There's that too. But anyway, you can have people that steal and they get away with it. Hundreds, thousands of dollars, and they just get away with it. Why does God allow that sort of stuff to happen? Is it because he favors those people? No, he's showing them mercy, especially when they don't deserve it. He's allowing them a chance to repent. But the question is, will they? Have you ever messed up and thought, oh no, I'm going to be punished now? And it doesn't happen? That's happened to me before. Times where I'm like, oh no, I messed up. And the consequences don't happen. Some people are going to rejoice and say, oh ho, I just lucked out there. And others are going to say, oh, I was shown mercy when I didn't deserve it. Someone who looks at it and says that they have been shown mercy, they're going to be more likely to correct than somebody who thinks that they won the lottery. That's why I hate it when I hear people say like, oh, it's just kind of how the world works. No, I think it's that God is showing mercy to people, and we're misinterpreting mercy as good fortune, as if we've gotten away with something. So our culture needs to kind of consider this. Whether it's somebody who's cheating in a game, somebody who is robbing, or somebody who is focusing on depravity and finding success in the world of art. You know what would happen if I submitted something to an art competition? One of two things would happen. One, I would be competing with people that have dark emotion artwork, and I would not be able to compete with that because the people that vote for that stuff tend to lean towards the dark stuff anyway. It would not be successful. It's not saying, hey, this is how the world works. It's more like saying, hey, this is how sin operates. And if you want to compete with sin, then it's going to feel unfair. But we're not supposed to compete with sin. We're supposed to be pointing people away from it. And in doing so, that means you're not supposed to be chasing after the fame and glory that the world does. So the question becomes rather, why does the world find victory? The question is, why are you competing against the world? Oh, that changes the narrative a lot, doesn't it? Why would you compete against the world if you know that the world is doing something that's dark and ungodly? Now, sometimes you do have a competition that you get to compete in and you get to find success in, and you are given a chance to show glory to God in that opportunity. But it's not for everything. And we need to stop thinking like that. I need to stop thinking like that. There's been many times where I think, oh, well, I need to compete better. I need to work harder. Because I look at the world and I start thinking, well, the world succeeds. Why am I not succeeding? But that's the whole point. We're not supposed to be competing to please the world or to please the citizens of it. We're supposed to be pleasing God And if we're doing what's right in his sight, it doesn't matter if we succeed against the world or not. We're still doing right. We're still being a benefit, a blessing. The more you fight against the world to try and find victory, the more you're going to be discouraged and disappointed. Now, eventually, those that live in the world are going to be discouraged and disappointed, especially when they get to their older age and they start to realize the parade has passed them by. And they're going to lash out or become depressed, saying, well, I guess there's nothing left. The Christian looks at it and says, well, God has no longer needs me in this category. I wonder what else he has planned for me. The Christian looks at it and says, well, God had me there for a time. Or this is how a Christian should be looking at it. God has me here for a time. I will do good while I am given that opportunity, and when he no longer wants me to do this, he will take it away and I will be given something else to work with. But we shouldn't be trying to compete. And the more we try to compete, the more we'll become disheartened. My friend that did the film festival, he lost compared to the other competitors. It probably ruined him it ruined opportunities for him to get a better start to his career. Probably ruined mine to get a better start to my career. Well, in some ways it definitely did. It didn't become something we could put on a demo reel. It didn't become something where we could say, hey, we won this competition and then get a better job opportunity. It had consequences. But here's the thing. The people that did find success, things didn't necessarily pan out for them. Not in the way that they would have wanted. Their fame and glory was short-lived. They quit shortly thereafter. Things got hard. Their moment of glory gone. And they became nobodies. I haven't heard any of them have been in the industry since. I've not heard about any sort of great successes. In fact, I saw somebody recently that I knew who has started streaming, and he has about the same audience as I do. That's not success. I'm not successful, nor is he. We're both stagnant. So who comes out on top? I would argue as the person who seeks a way to please God in his field, in his work, in his labor. I think that is the person that's going to find the most success and the most comfort when it's all said and done. You are not going to win at everything you set your sights on. Either because you're competing with the world, or maybe, more likely, you're doing something that God does not necessarily approve of, and you're going to be shown over time that it's not fulfilling. Here's an example. Somebody's like, oh, well, I'm going to put everything I have into becoming a multimillionaire. Do you think God's going to favor that one? Now, he can make someone a multimillionaire. He can make someone the richest man in the world. He did that for Solomon. But if you go out and say, I'm going to become this, I'm going to find this success, I'm going to compete, and I'm going to work harder than anyone else because I'm going to be dedicated. Is that what God wants you to do? We should stop and ask ourselves constantly, are we doing something that is honorable? Something that is pointing people to God? And if it's not, maybe we should be asking God, is this what you would have? And if not, how can I do better so as to be in line with what you would have? I saw a film recently. I'm going to be going over this in detail soon enough. I watched most of the Alien movies, in part because they're cultural films, and I heard enough references to where I was like, I think I finally need to see these. I regret it. I hated those films with a deep passion. And here's why. And we're going to explore this in a future stream. I won't go into the darkness of it, but I do want to mention what the purpose of those shows were. It was twofold. Fear and hopelessness. Those are the two things that series thrives off of. Hopelessness. The first one, I thought, oh well, maybe the hopeful sign is that that the main character is saved despite everyone else perishing. I thought, well, maybe that's the hope. But then the next film basically erases the hope and introduces horror into it and says, oh, well, now it's depression. Well, then they give a little bit of hope. Oh, we did the right thing. We saved someone's life. And then the very next film, everyone dies at the very start. So basically you found out that no one was saved. They all were sent to death. It erased all the hope that the previous film had built up. And then the next film, same thing. Hope is trying to be kindled, only for it all to be dashed to pieces, and everyone dies. Evil films. They are cultural icons, though. They're everywhere. That's one of the reasons why I finally wanted to see it. Everyone is familiar with it. So if you make a sci-fi story and nobody knows about it, but everyone still knows Alien, does that mean you're a failure? I would say that's not something you should be worried about. The devil wants people to be hopeless. The devil wants people to be fearful. He wants people to break, and so thus he is going to tell people, his minions, to create nightmares that people can live out and thus lose hope. They can become fearful. And that's the one thing I keep seeing about those shows. It's all about getting people to be afraid. It's all about having people lose hope. So, you're not competing against that stuff if you're a Christian. You shouldn't. you should be willing to say, you know what? I'm here to make something that is honorable. I'm not here to compete with evil. Evil will thrive in this world. And that's the thing over the last couple of years I've had to come to terms with. Realizing that sin is going to be, dare I say, successful. But it won't be lasting. Sin has its day. Satan is going to call his minions, and they're going to commit terrible atrocities throughout history. Rome butchered Christians. And then it became the biggest stronghold for Christendom. Satan didn't win. Satan was trying to prevent what would happen. And thus, the church found a safe haven in which it was able to endure and spread across the whole world what Satan meant to destroy, God meant to use for his glory. So, because of that, the Caesars had their way. Nero had his way. But it didn't end well for him. And in the end, it was not his legacy that endured. It was Christ's legacy that did. That has, and still does. That legacy is still strong. It has had times of weakness, but that's because of when mankind turns away from God. So don't compete with the world. Don't try and compete against those that are relying upon evil. Compete so that you can point more people to truth. Point more people to the gospel. That's a legacy worth having. Nothing else is going to pan out well for you. That is the only thing that is going to work. That's the only thing that is going to be enduring. Because of that, I don't want to compete anymore. I don't want competitions. In fact, I've avoided many competitions over my life as a result. But I didn't really know why. I was like, I have this gut feeling, and recently I've really started to understand why I have not competed. Why I didn't have the drive for it anymore. It was because I realized that it was going to be an unfair competition. I was competing for the wrong attention, or I would be competing for the wrong attention. Now, some people do make good on that, but there's a very high chance that you will have to compromise on something. And if it's not known immediately what that is, it will become more apparent as time goes on. Anyway, I've rambled enough on this. I said I wasn't going to focus too much on rambling, and here I am, yet again, rambling. So, sorry about that. I'll be quiet now. We'll be going for another 20 minutes, then I'll be wrapping up, and so that we can go show support to Dadman's stream. So far, I'm liking this fire effect. I'm going to have to add a couple blending options, but right now I'm liking the sort of style that's coming off of it. And it's going to help blend a lot of these different elements together, I think, in a worthwhile manner. So it doesn't take a whole lot of time to try and do it. The texturing that I spent all this time focusing on is now going to be impacted from these flames. And so this will help speed up the final parts of this whole piece of artwork. One more thing I want to mention about this. I know probably no one's listening to these things, but maybe it's just so I can be able to think about these things prior to having like deeper discussions on regular streams with these. Is there something that you have looked at in your life and thought you failed at something? And thought, oh, well, obviously I needed to work harder at it. And then you look at somebody who has instant success and think, wait a minute. They didn't go through any sweat, blood, and tears to try and find success. And somehow, they have wild success. My cousin's words come back to haunt me on a regular basis. Not to me necessarily personally, but more towards the world's view of Christianity. When he was asked, why don't you want to become a Christian? He said, I don't want to be on the losing team. I don't want to fail. It's like, what a weird thing to say. If you ask a faithful Christian, they'll say that's completely inaccurate. But ask someone of the world, they're going to look at that and say, oh, yep, those Christians, they just get beaten down, they get outsmarted, they're not willing to take the bull by the horns and take what they kind of deserve or whatnot. They just kind of accept their fate. They view that as weakness. The world views that as weakness. But yet routinely, I'm reminded by Christian men and women throughout history that being faithful has a reward that the world desperately wants and can never find. Peace and joy. Oh, sure, you may not be the multimillionaire that Joe Schmo down the way is. Joe Schmo sued his company and he walked away with millions. He's set up for life. And George down the way is barely able to rub 2 pennies together. And yet he seems happy. And Joe Schmo can't figure it out why. He's like, but I have all the money. I have all the power. I have all the prestige. I can bully people into giving me stuff. And George down the way seems happier. Now, George may not think that. George may think, well, I can't even afford nice things for my family. And so he may not feel like a success. But he has a peace that even he doesn't understand. But Joe Schmo can see it. He looks at him, he's like, why is he so peaceful? Because to him, to Joe Schmo, to anyone who's rich or successful, success, wealth, and power equals happiness, but it never delivers. Humility, kindness, and love bring about true peace, true happiness. So, when deciding whether or not you think that you're a failure compared to the world's standards, remember this. The world is desperately trying to figure out why people who are peaceful and kind seem to always be so happy. And they think it's just because they're charitable or something like that. They don't realize that there's something deeper. They don't realize that there's a faith factor. So even if you don't feel like you're a success, the world will see you as a success, and they will desperately be trying to become like you, even though they themselves don't understand why. Don't lose heart. That's the moral of the story. As we go into 2026, I suspect a lot of people are probably going to be financially hurting pretty badly. All the signs are pointing towards it. No, I'm not saying that prophets are coming out and saying that's going to happen. No, I'm saying that the financial trends are pointing towards that direction. The population crash is pointed towards that direction. Do not lose love and kindness, regardless of what happens. Regardless of what your life may be like. You could have the bank take away your home. You could be thrown out onto the streets. Do not become cold and bitter. You probably can't avoid being cold. I mean, if you're thrown out in the middle of Alaskan winters, of course you're going to be cold. But don't lose the spark of hope. Help those that you see who crash and burn. For they're going to need it, because they will get disheartened. And it'll be up to us who do have success. Now, I'm saying that, assuming that I won't be in that camp, although I very well could be. It'll be up to us to try and, the royal us, to try and remember the lessons that Christ taught us. In doing so, we might be able to, despite not being successful in the world's eyes, to find a way to still share hope so others may yet again find joy. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up here. I'm going to go and spend time in the Dadman stream. If we had the ability to raid that, I would be doing that right now. But we don't have anybody watching right now except for the bot over on the Rumble side. Which, if you're not a bot, my apologies. But the trend tends to point to the Rumble bots being about 3 or 4 people a stream. It's gotten better, but they're still there. Happens exactly when the stream goes live. When the stream goes offline, they will still hang around. So I'm suspecting bots. If you're not, give a like or a dislike. I'll accept that. Until next time, folks, have a very pleasant evening and morning, everybody. Be civil to one another. Show people kindness in this new year. And don't pursue the world. Pursue Christ. Until then, folks, have a very pleasant end to 2025.